Hello there everyone and welcome back to the GSL-English Podcast. My name is Gideon and this is a podcast for all learners of English to practice and improve in a relaxed and natural way. And today we are going to answer a very important question. Okay? It's a question that I have been asked so many times on recent episodes. I see it popping up all the time in the comments on YouTube, on Spotify and emails, and that is, why can I understand you but I can't speak English? Why is it that I understand pretty much every word you're saying, but when it comes to speaking, it just doesn't match? Why are my understanding skills so much better than my speaking skills? Why is my listening just so much better than my speaking? Well, I've got an answer for you. I've got a theory as to why that might be the situation. So if you are currently feeling that way, that you understand English absolutely fine, you can listen to podcasts like this, you can watch TV shows, listen to the radio, you find that you understand everything, but when it comes to speaking, when it comes to communication, you struggle. That is where you find the issue is. Okay, so we're going to address that today. We're going to look at perhaps why that is the case for most of us. Learning languages, but also learning anything. And what can we do moving forward? Okay, now, just as a little note here, if you do find yourself in that situation, if you do currently feel that you understand a lot more than you can speak, I just want to say this at the beginning, you've done nothing wrong. Okay? It's not because of a mistake that you've made, and there isn't a fix. You know what I mean? There isn't something that needs fixing. You haven't done anything wrong. Perhaps what we need to do is just change our approach going forward. Okay, so this is a really positive episode that I've spent a bit of time just thinking about, researching, and putting different thoughts and points together. And this is what I've isolated it to. This is what I feel the issue is for the majority. So I do believe this will help. Okay, and I really, truly hope it does, because if you have got to the point where you can understand, for example, this podcast absolutely fine, you can watch TV shows and understand everything. If you have got to that point, or you understand most of it, then you deserve to be able to speak as well as you can listen. Okay, you've put in a lot of work to get to that point, so you deserve to be able to speak that well, and I'm here to help. I'm here to help you get what you deserve. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And of course, as always, this isn't scripted word for word, so it gives you an opportunity just to absorb the English language in its most natural form. So if you are new here, that's what I do. I create these podcasts every week just to present the English language to you in a real way that can best prepare you for real life situations. So don't forget to subscribe. And if you are a returning viewer on YouTube or listener on Spotify, cheers. Thank you so much for your support. Getting a few more views at the moment and listens, which is great, which is really encouraging, particularly regarding last week's episode, where we read an extract from Atomic Habits about motivation, about staying motivated, and we looked into the Goldilocks rule. That episode's doing quite well. You guys seem to have really enjoyed it, and I get the impression that it's helped a few of you. So, props go to the writer, the author of that book. I can't remember his name. I think it's James Clear. I'm not too sure, but all credit goes to the book, Atomic Habits, where I got that text from. But if you did find it helpful, which it seems a few of you had, then I'm over the moon. That makes me really happy. So I hope you've had a good week. I hope you're having a nice weekend. If you are not working, if you are working, then well done. Grinding hard. Well done. Got to do what you got to do. But I hope you got some time to just rest and relax today. And if you can, before we get into that important question, if you've got a chance, grab yourself a cup of tea, grab yourself some breakfast, some beans on toast, some Weetabix, which is what I'm on at the moment. I don't know whether Weetabix is a universal thing. Maybe it's just here in England, but I love Weetabix at the moment. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, Google it. It's a very bland and boring breakfast, but I'm loving it at the moment. Having 3 Weetabix every day. Not that you asked, and probably not that you care about my breakfast. But yeah, grab some breakfast whilst you're listening to this podcast. Do what you want. I don't care, but enjoy it. So why can I understand English, but I can't speak? The truth about input and output. So that's what we're going to talk about. Input and output. And that is where I feel the issue, no, we're not going to call it an issue. That is where I feel that the answer to this question lies. Input and output. And they are 2 words that, to answer this, or to keep moving forward, they're 2 words that we truly need to understand. What are they? So input is what we receive, what we take in. Okay? It's like having a glass, which I did have prepared to show you. I've left it downstairs if you're watching on YouTube. So just imagine in my hand I have a glass, and input would be the water that fills the glass. Okay? So input is everything that we take in, that we consume regarding the English language. And we do this through listening. We do this through reading. So right now, you're taking in, aren't you? This is input. You're listening along with me. And we do this all the time. You know, we're always taking in information, particularly when it comes to the English language. So that's what we're talking about. Purely just taking in, consuming. Output is what we produce. Okay, output is like taking that glass of water and then pouring it out. Okay? Speaking and writing and communicating is everything that we produce, everything that we give out. That is what we mean by output. For example, let's just think about this. You can't pour a glass of water out without first putting water in it, can you? Input is essential. Input is vital. We can't breathe out before we've breathed in. If you try and do it, you just make some kind of weird throat noise. You can't breathe out if you haven't breathed in first. You can't pour a glass of water out with no water in it. And it's the same with language. We can't output before we have input. Input is essential. Input is vital. If we imagine like a big jar, okay, a big jar, a bucket or a container, and every time you listen or you read, you add a little marble to your jar. You listen to a podcast, that's 1 marble, that's 1 stone. You watch a TV show, that's another marble. You read a short story, you read a book, you read an article, more marbles constantly going into that jar or bucket until that bucket is full. Once that bucket is full, even once that jar is half full, that's where the output starts. You've got something now that you can give out. But we can't give out before we have taken in. And that's why I said at the beginning, if you do find yourself at that point where you understand a lot more than you can speak, than you can give, it's because you have got to the point where your bucket, your jar is full and you are ready now to output that information. So we have to input before we output. So you've not done anything wrong. You're just at the point now where you can empty that jar a little bit. You can pour out that water, that information. You can start using it. It's like you've got a full battery. You've got a full store of energy that now you can start giving out, outputting, not just inputs. And generally speaking, that is what comes first in language learning. The first thing we do is input. And that's why it is, generally speaking, easier to understand than it is to speak, because it's the first thing that we did. We input the language. Okay, we might do a little bit of speaking here and there. There might be a little bit of output here and there, but the majority of what we do at the beginning is input. We listen, we read. At school, when we think about it, what was the majority of what we did during our lessons? It was input, wasn't it? It was reading, it was textbooks. Well, saying that was when I was at school over nearly 20 years ago. But I remember in my French and German classes, how much time of those classes was spent speaking in a language? Not a lot. Most of it was reading, was writing, was going through textbooks, and perhaps a little bit of repetition here and there. But we weren't trained to have a conversation. We weren't being taught to speak. We were simply taking in information. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with input. And well done. That is why you're at the point you are, where you can understand the majority of things, because you've taken the time to input all of that information, all of that regarding the English language. But now's the time for output. And now's the time, to really just let out some of that information, that knowledge that you have gained. We can think of it kind of like a baby. Now, when we think of a baby being born, for many months, years, they're just listening, aren't they? Really. There's no speaking. There's some strange noises, some cooing here and there. No full sentences. Simply, all that baby is doing is absorbing language, sound by sound. Word by word, they're just taking in that language like a sponge, just input, constant input. And then what happens one day? Well, that first word comes out. Mum, dad, mama, dada. Boom! That first word comes out. That input phase is over. They've built a strong enough foundation to now pop a word out. Okay, it's just one word. But the input phase, or sole input phase, where it's only the input phase, is now over. Now there's a little bit of output that starts with one word. And then, of course, as a baby grows up, becomes a child and then teenager, of course, that just develops, doesn't it? That language and that speaking skills develop. We constantly input, but then we output. And that is how we improve. And if we think of it perhaps like if we wanted to get good at something, that sounds like terrible English. If we wanted to improve at something, there we go. Let's imagine that you wanted to play guitar. You might take in a lot of knowledge first. You might go on YouTube and just watch videos on how to play the guitar before you've even picked up a guitar, before you've even bought a guitar, which is great. You're inputting information. You listen to music, start to understand different sounds that the guitar can make. You understand perhaps terminology. You understand just the basics, inputting information. But if you never get a guitar, if you never actually pick up a guitar, then that information is relatively useless, isn't it? You're not going to improve. You're not going to get good to improve. Why do I keep saying that? To get good at guitar? I think that's okay. It just doesn't sound like correct English to me. Hey, oh well. Input is not enough. There's got to be output. So the reason that we might be able to understand a lot more than we can speak is because we are stuck in this input phase. And when I say stuck, I mean that we're stuck in it because there's no output. We're always in the input phase, but there has to be a balance between input and output. We can't just be in one. We've built a strong foundation. That's good. But now we need to keep on improving through output. Input, output, input, output. There was an interesting language expert called Dr. Stephen Krashen. And he said that we acquire language when we understand. In other words, basically, we understand first and then we speak later. So we acquire language when we understand messages, not when we speak them, was his exact quote, meaning that the first thing we do to acquire a language is to start to understand it without speaking. We just input, we just take in. That is the first step. But the difficult thing is life gets in the way and we just stay in that first step. We just continue listening to podcasts, we continue watching movies, we continue reading, and we stay in that. So we need to transition. We need to move from input to output and then repeat that process. So how do we move from input to output? How do we move from understanding to speaking? Well, we can think of it like this. Input is like gathering or getting tools like hammers, nails, woods, everything we need. And output is building a house. You can't build a house without tools, but also you can't just collect tools forever. At some point, you have to start building. Even if you think, I don't have enough tools at the moment. I don't 100% know what I'm doing. You just got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. We start building. We start speaking. You've built the foundation. You've got the tools. You've got the knowledge that you need. Now you start building. Now we start speaking. So that's my theory as to why many of us, I was like this with Spanish. I say my Spanish is not very good, by the way. I feel like when I say that, people think, oh, Gideon speaks Spanish. No, I don't speak Spanish at all. Because I'm stuck in that input phase and now I've stopped. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a bit of a hypocrite. But I just locked myself into that input phase and there was no output. So it didn't really help me. There has to be a point of output. You cannot stay in that input phase forever. So maybe that's where we are. Maybe we are just constantly taking in information. Really well done, but you deserve to be able to speak. You deserve to be able to communicate. So how can we do that? Well, I've got 5 ways for you to start speaking. Okay? The first way is through shadowing. There's so many YouTube lessons out there focusing on this shadowing technique. I've got videos on it and I talk about it a lot in my podcasts. Basically, shadowing is where you listen and then repeat immediately. For example, someone says, I'm going to work. You say, I'm going to work. And you can do this, for example, with my podcasts. A lot of the time on YouTube, I have the text if we're going through an article. You could read along at the same time as me, which is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more advanced, but that helps you to build pace, build rhythm, build kind of natural fluency. Or you can listen to a sentence, pause the video, and repeat. Shadowing. And this is a brilliant exercise because you don't have to think too much about what to say. It's just there for you. It's just building that muscle memory, which is essential. It's building upon what you already know. And you'll start to think, and you'll realize actually that a lot of this is in there because of all of that input phase. And now it just starts coming out, and you'll realize the more you do it, the easier it gets. Shadowing is essential. There's some superb lessons. I know, got a friend, British Education, great YouTube channel. He does repeat with me videos. Just a brilliant way of practicing speaking. Just without the stress of a conversation, without the worry of knowing what to say. You can just get speaking. And that's the first step to this output phase. Just get speaking. Whatever it takes, just speak. Okay, and shadowing is a brilliant way of doing that. Just a little disclaimer. One thing I do recommend is choosing American or British accent, British English, and choosing perhaps a particular accent or way of pronunciation. And the reason I say this is because sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. If we follow along with perhaps an American shadowing video on YouTube, and then we switch between a British shadowing video on YouTube, of course there are some differences in pronunciation. Even with British English, there's differences in pronunciation depending on the area. For example, I say grass or bath. My wife is from the north of England. She says grass. No, that's American. She says grass, bath. So I just find that it sometimes helps to pick a region, pick an accent, pick a certain way of pronouncing words, and try to stick with that if you can, just to make the job easier for yourself, and you have a bit of consistency with what you are saying and the way that you are pronouncing words. So that's where I would start in that output, is just to start shadowing. Pick a video, whatever, and just read along with me. Talk along with me if the text is on the screen. You haven't got to worry about what you've got to say. You haven't got to overthink anything. You haven't got to worry about what anyone will think of you. You just get talking. That's where I would start. And then after that, we're going to get a little bit weird, get a little bit crazy. Talk to yourself. Describe what you're doing in the morning. Talk about your routine. No one is listening. You are safe. Okay, we're talking to ourselves. There's something a little weird about that, but we're all a little bit local. Just as me throwing in a little bit of Spanish there shows. We're all a little bit crazy. It's all right. Be weird. Talk to yourself. When you're making a coffee, talk about it. One thing to do is think about your day ahead and talk about what you need to do. And this is actually a brilliant exercise, because not only does it help you to practice your speaking skills, but also it's a great memory aid. I actually do this in English. If I've got a busy day ahead of clients and work and things like that, I will vocalize it in the morning, what I need to do. So at this time I got this, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And I don't know if it's just me, but it really helps me to remember throughout the day what I've got to do. So it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone there. So talk to yourself, talk about your day ahead or your day tomorrow. Yep, it gives you a chance to practice your speaking skills. No one's listening, you're in a safe environment, but also you vocalize your day. Superb memory aid. There you go. So that's what I would do next. Talk to yourself, talk about your day, talk about things you like, talk about a film you watched. Home is a safe space. Speak in it. Okay, and then I would start to, communicate small phrases whenever you can with others. And this is a little bit of a difficult one if you're not in an English-speaking country, if you don't have many opportunities to speak the English language. I understand this can be a little bit challenging, but if you are in a position where you do know somebody that speaks English, but you're really worried to speak, you don't speak at all, just start with simple phrases. Oh, it's nice weather today. How are you? Oh, I'm good, thanks. I'm feeling a little bit tired. I've had a good week. Just start with simple phrases. You haven't got to be a scholar. You haven't got to change people's view on the world. Just relax. Just start with simple phrases. Start with simple conversations. Start small. When we think about that input phase, when we started, we didn't go straight to Shakespeare, did we? No, start off with simple books, perhaps children's books. Start small, that input phase, and then you build upon it. It's the same with the output phase. We don't go straight into a monologue about ethical issues, do we? No, we We start small. Nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's the only way. Start small and then slowly improve. Just start with small conversations, small comments in social settings, simple phrases that you're comfortable with, and then start pushing yourself. Just kind of like we looked at with that Goldilocks rule last week. We don't want it to be too easy, not too hard, but just right. So start thinking about that. Start with small phrases and then progressing. Another great way is voice messages. If you've got friends that speak English, little tip, rather than writing your messages, send audio messages to each other. Or perhaps if you've got a native English speaking friend or an advanced English speaking friend or family member, or you've got a teacher, rather than writing messages to them, speak your messages. And this might just be basic conversation again. Hey, what are you doing today? Do you fancy coming for a coffee? Rather than writing it, speak it. On WhatsApp now, you can do those voice messages. A great opportunity to just send little messages. And then if you're really brave, listen to them back. See what you like, see what you don't like. Maybe that's something to think about. Or maybe you could challenge yourself next week, whenever you can, rather than writing messages. Why not send a voice message? And the more we do that, the more comfortable we get with speaking. You just get more comfortable with the idea of speaking. You can see with all of these suggestions, I'm not saying for you to go out and have a conversation with somebody about politics. No. Just start small, just like we did with the input phase. Slowly start using what you already have. Slowly start giving it out and then push yourself. Push yourself a little bit more. Start talking in more detail. Start, just being willing to express your opinion more in conversation. Start outputting what you already have. And I think voice messages is a brilliant way of doing that. And the fifth point is just to speak in real life situations whenever you can and just go for it. You deserve to be able to speak well in English. And you've done amazingly well getting to the point where you can understand films, you can read, you can do all of that. You've done amazingly well getting there. Why stop there? No, you got a right. You deserve it. So get speaking whenever you can. And we're not talking about perfection. We're not talking about, never making a mistake. In fact, I would say that if you're not making any mistakes, you're not going to improve. So just get speaking whenever you can. Perhaps this is language exchanges, speaking apps like HelloTalk, joining a conversation platform like Cambly, getting a private tutor, speaking to your friends in English, or perhaps you currently live in England. I know many of you listening currently live in England, but you're scared to speak. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what others think. Just get talking whenever you can and just go for it. And then the important part is once you start outputting information, not all output, then we input again and we repeat that process. But what you'll find you do as you output, you have to fill up that bucket again with information, input, but this time it's more challenging. It's perhaps larger stones, it's larger marbles that fill the bucket, and then we output that. And then we input again with new idioms, new phrases, more complex structures, and then it's a process. Input, then output, constantly improving. But we need to get out of that input phase and start just going for it and outputting everything you've already learned. If you understand English, that is already a huge win. Bravo, you've done well. Speaking will come naturally if you do it, with time, with practice and patience. Yeah. Learning languages, it's a really difficult thing. It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a journey. Trust the process, enjoy it, and celebrate every word you say. Celebrate the wins, celebrate those times that you talk, and just don't worry so much about speaking. But to improve, you've got to do it. There has to be output. So you might think, I'm out of balance. A lot of my English learning is input. Maybe at the moment it's 90% input, 10% output. Can you change that to 60% input, 40% output? Because I think, let's be realistic, naturally we're always going to take in more, aren't we? That's all right. But can we change it? 60% input, 40% output. And if we don't have anyone to talk to, go home and read out loud. Shadow with me. I'm your friend. I'm here to help. Shadow with me on YouTube. Speak with me. Read along with me. In the past, I've done some Speak English videos with me. Just do them. Get speaking. And the more we do this as well, it's not just pronunciation and fluency. Our muscles, our brain, it just starts to put all of the dots together. And it just gets used to doing what it needs to do to speak in English. Our mouth and our muscles just train themselves to do what they need to do to speak in English, and it just gets easier. Okay, so that's my thought on it. You've done well getting to this point. Now's the time for output. Don't be scared. Start small, be realistic, and work your way up. You can do this. So let me know in the comments, please, if this is where you find yourself, please let me know. And have you got any tips? This is just my opinion, but if you've got any tips, any solutions, anything that's helped you, share it in the comments. Let us know. But you've got this. You've done really well. Don't be too hard on yourself. You can improve. We're all proud of you. You're doing really well. Just keep going and get speaking. So there you go. That's today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that I've got a little blue light behind me, which I think looks really fancy. I know I'm about 5 years behind on my podcasting room, but every episode there seems to be something different, I've realised. But now we have a plant, which I didn't get a lot of names through for the plant on the left here. A little bit disappointed, guys. I wanted some good names. So if you've got any ideas for names of this plant that we could name it, let me know. And yeah, got blue lights now behind us. Thought it was a little bit more professional than the lamp. We're getting there slowly. Everything takes time, doesn't it? Everything worth having takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, but they worked on it daily. Yeah, same with us, isn't it? And same with English learning. Okay. Well done, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe, give this video a like, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.